Well, hello. I hate when my camera starts and I don't mean to make it start, but today we have a friend. It's Beans Sneeb Monroe. He is very scruffy and probably needs a haircut again. But anywho, he's not usually in my videos. I try to keep him preoccupied when I record. Today's just, I don't think it's gonna be one of those days. So, and excuse my background, it's completely different. And my front ground. It's just everything is weird. My angle's weird. My camera's weird. Weird puppy. That's put your ear down. Nobody wants to see that backwardsness. Okay. And anyways, everything's weird today because I have a rearranged living room and my background is just all messed up over there. I've got, I can't complain because I have guitars and pianos everywhere and the wrong spots and it's not a problem, but a spoiled brat problem. So I'm spoiled and my background's all messed up right now. So anyways, I'm in the egg chair. Again, not a problem. So I am a princess, I guess. And yeah, I'm not meaning to sound like I'm bragging, but I'm kind of bragging. I have too much stuff, so my background's weird and blah blah blah. Anyways, a very unnecessary intro. But I know that it's weird and it bothers me it's all different, but whatever. It is what it is. So last time we were together, we read chapter 6 and got my leaf to remove. Let's put it on the desk over there. And so we will be on chapter 7 today. And we will see how many pages we can get through today and hopefully get through without my little beans disrupting too much or making too many weird noises. We shall see. So let's see how this goes. Okay. It is The Wounded Heart, of course, and it is Hope for Adult Victims of SA, and it's Childhood SA. So let's just get into it. Chapter 7, Ambivalence. The final category of internal damage, ambivalence, is probably the most difficult to describe. It also has the potential to produce more shame and contempt than either powerlessness or betrayal. Although both factors are intricately intertwined with ambivalence, ambivalence can be defined as feeling two contradictory emotions at the same moment. A good friend of mine, a single woman, recently returned from the wedding of one of her good friends. She described in glowing terms. What do you need to do, buddy? What are you doing? This is why you can't read it with me, because you want to get down? Yeah. Oh, don't get stuck. Okay. Okay, be free, but be good. Okay. Can you do that, please? Thank you. Don't eat my cords. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Literally one paragraph in. A good friend of mine, a single woman, recently returned from the wedding of her good friend. She described in glowing terms the joy she felt for her friend, but her eyes were noticeably moist and sad. I asked her how she felt at the moment, and she said, weird. The description of her inner state as weird mislabeled her enormous maturity as something deficient and odd. Her good heart rejoiced for her friend, who was chosen and honored in ceremony. Her own loneliness. Please hold. Okay. Puppy is very high maintenance right now. Sorry, you can hear his clickety-clacks of his fingernails. Or toenails. Great, he's got the milk jug. That's really loud. I'm so sorry. This video is probably not going to happen. Okay, her experience of ambivalence or contradictory feelings of joy and sorrow was not a mark of weirdness, but was a sign of her deeply attractive maturity. I don't know why it's attractive maturity. Unfortunately, emotions that are labeled as weird, crazy, stupid, or even worse, ungodly, are just as often inner experiences that reflect great spiritual maturity. This is particularly true with respect to the experience of ambivalence generated by SA. He's just looking at me with his bone. He wants me to chase him. I feel bad. I can't chase you right now, buddy. It's okay. Please hold for the 1000th time. This is bad. Okay, take 55 in 7 minutes. This just cannot be. He just dropped his bone. Okay. Just eat it right here. Stop dropping it. Okay. In order to minimize confusion and misunderstanding, I must discuss what I do not intend to say, as well as what I am attempting to say. Ambivalence revolves around the experience of relational, sensual, and sexual pleasure that in most cases, and to some degree, was experienced during the first 3 stages of SA. Sensitive men and women will shudder at the thought of how that may be heard by either naive or malevolent ears. One abusive father I worked with told me that kids liked sex. He coyly remarked, "I didn't do anything that she didn't ask for first." Please. I asked him what she did to provoke the fondling of her genitals. He said, "She climbed in my lap and told me to hold her, and so I did." He assumed wickedly and inaccurately that her desire for cuddling was a cue for S foreplay. The fact is that S arousal is possible in an unsuspecting victim because a small child has arousal receptors in his penis or her clitoris. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube. That do respond to touch. But the fact does not justify the sexualization of relationship, nor can it be argued that a child wants and actively seeks S stimulation, unless he or she has been repetitively conditioned to associate S pleasure with relational intimacy. The archaic and perverse notion that a woman wants to be R-worded or that a child seeks out S content is a patently stupid and God-dishonoring presumption. Thank you. Come on. Nevertheless, the experience of pleasure in the midst of powerlessness and betrayal sets off a profoundly convoluted spiral of damage. SA creates destructive cross currents and undertows in the human soul. How is it possible to experience pleasure in the midst of agonizing physical pain or crushing relational betrayal? One man recalled being laid across the top of a fence post, having his pants pulled down, and then being anally R-worded by his father. The pain was excruciating. There was no S pleasure in the experience, but occasionally his father would end the ordeal by M-wording him. For those few moments, he struggled between giving in and having an O, and an equally strong desire to not to finish, for lack of a better word. I'm trying to be careful not to be too gross, thus depriving his father of the perverse joy of seeing his pleasure. The battle always ended in mingled pleasure and intense self-loathing. His only relief came when he was unable to have an E word. His impotence was a source of enormous shame, but the rage he was able to express toward his father by remaining flaccid was a sufficient gain to withstand his father's withering disgust. Sadly, he remained impotent through most of his 18-year marriage. A young woman who was teased about her maturing body by her brothers, uncle, and father recalled feeling a sense of power, dominance, and attractiveness when they commented on her shapely form. She had never been valued for any of her academic or social success, but when she was 14, she began to be the center of male discussion in her family. It dawned on her that she had something that men, including her male relatives, wanted and valued. Her hungry soul soaked up the attention, though she felt embarrassed and cheap. When she blushed and responded with girlish discomfort with which was misconstrued as a flirtatious come on, the comments became more aggressive and sexually descriptive. Her pleasure turned to disgust. But the initial pleasure of being wanted lingered in her soul and eventually was conjoined with contempt. Her anger toward her relatives and the confusion over her own internal response to their suggestive comments was hidden under a growing prim and proper aloofness that remained in her relationships with men and women 30 years after the period of abuse. Okay. In both cases, the unacknowledged and undealt with ambivalence established patterns of relating to others that carried the past abuse into current relationships. It is imperative to understand the roots of ambivalence. What is its cause, cost, and consequence? What core image of herself will a victim develop as a result of her ambivalence about the abuse to her body and soul? The cause of ambivalence. The cause of the distorted feelings related to abuse includes factors that involve the past, present, and future. The past is clear. An experience of relational pleasure, being invited to go fishing for or being complimented about S attractiveness, or sensual pleasure, being hugged, or S pleasure, being touched on primary or secondary sexual parts, will arouse deep parts of the soul. S pleasure, in particular, is both frightening and stimulating to a young child. The experience of SA feels like a taste of life to an empty heart. When the same pleasure is connected with the experience of being powerless, betrayed, and used, then untold damage will occur. The devastation is just as great when S arousal proper has not occurred, yet the victim enjoys other aspects of arousal in the relationship. A young man or woman may feel conjoint relational, sensual, and sexual arousal in the midst of an adult's flirtatious interaction. The inevitable feelings of both enjoyment and shame produce the anguish of ambivalence. Central to understanding ambivalence is the fact that the very thing that was despised also brought some degree of pleasure. The pleasure was, in most cases, the only taste of life available to the famished child. Nevertheless, later, most adults cannot forgive their body or soul for betraying them. The ambivalence about pleasure helps explain the chronic sense of irrational responsibility for the past abuse. Most victims feel as if they were somewhat responsible for what occurred, especially if arousal is viewed as cooperation. As mentioned before, it is of little help to tell an abuse victim that it was not their fault. Though it is not wrong to offer this encouragement, it will not last nor facilitate the process of deep personal change. The irrational roots of false responsibility are sunk deep into the soil of contempt, bolstered by an unacknowledged or hated ambivalence. Okay. Fold that so I don't lose my place. 136. Okay. So I definitely really struggle with this whole concept. Like, a part of me is like, ew, why am I even reading this? Like, it's been a while since I read this with you guys. And a part of me is like, I'm kind of like, I'm moving past this stuff. And like rereading it just kind of gives me the ick. And it may do that for you guys too. So like, if it is like triggering and it's just not, it's doing you more harm than good, then please like turn this off. Like, you don't have to listen to it. I'm just hoping that it'll help the people that are like really still in the middle of healing and maybe they really need to hear this stuff, because I'm thinking like there's just so much in the world and so many different people's opinions about like minors, and some people joke about it. It's in a lot of the movies. It was like acceptable a long time ago for a 40-year-old to marry like a 12 or 13-year-old, and like so many things have changed over history. And it's just like got me thinking, so why is it so wrong? Why is it such a big deal that older people not sleep with, or our word, I'm using sleep with as like a gentle word, but obviously we know like the seriousness of it. Like, why shouldn't they interact like that? And I would have to say, like, maybe like the age or whatever, I don't know if it would necessarily matter if there were zero consequences to the minor child. So I don't want to like get in trouble for how I wear this. I want to be careful. But so like obviously there's laws, you know, now, but I don't think there always were laws for this stuff. So it's like, why did there become laws in the first place against older people being sexual with minor people? Why is it a big deal? You know, like to help people understand that either have never been through it or to help people to not do it. It's, to me, like, I don't know why they, like, maybe I should look it up, but I don't know why the laws became the laws. Obviously something happened to where enough people were hurt and affected by it that there became a law, like stop signs and stoplights. Most of the time on an old country road, there won't be a stop sign, and then enough people get in an accident that they're like, hey, we need a stop sign. Hey, we need a stoplight here because enough people keep crashing into each other. Well, I believe it's something happened along the way where enough kids got so affected by older people doing things with younger people that they had to do something, you know, just like right now in Michigan, we're trying to eliminate like the statute of limitations because that is something that affects so many people, including myself. When there's a limit on being able to tell on your perpetrator, that really affects people. And then they feel like they can't get closure, they can't get help, they can't get the justice they need. And the perpetrator can keep perpetrating because he never gets caught and never gets in trouble. So like, you know, he can just keep doing what he's doing for however old. Like he could be in his 80s and still getting away with abusing children. So anyways, it's like, why is it a big deal? Why should people not mess with minors? Because there is such a detrimental thing that happens to our brains. And it is so hard to describe until like you've had enough time to really like process what exactly happened. What are those feelings that you get? And I believe like reading these kind of books can really help us form those words and those sentences on how to explain it to people. Not that we have to, but even to just help ourselves work through it all. Because like, yeah, there was, when the abuse is happening, the S abuse, you know, it can be very confusing. You could feel like you're participating. You can feel like, heck, you could feel like it's your idea. You might feel like as a child, like you're the one that like asked your teacher or preacher or uncle to like hang out with you or cuddle with you or kiss you or hold your hand. You may even ask for it, like with your own words. That could happen because you're a little kid. Like, how do you know like it's good or bad or not? And then it's really confusing if any of it feels good. But there is something in your brain that knows, that can feel like it's wrong. You don't have to be taught that it's wrong. You don't have to be preached at that it's wrong. You don't even have to be told that to like your parents that it's wrong. There is something in you that feels disgusting. And it feels, I don't know, like you feel really scared. And I don't know why that happens. Like, why does it have to be such a big deal? Like, why do you have to feel traumatized? Like, if no one felt traumatized about it, there wouldn't be hundreds and hundreds of people messaging our group letting us know how horrible their life was because of it. Like their depression, their anxiety, their inability to work, their inability to function in society normally, their inability to want to get up in the morning, to not want to die. And it can't just be a coincidence that all of us feel that way when we all have completely different perpetrators, completely different ages, completely different time frames, different religions, you know, different religious circles. I know most of us are in IFB, but there are millions of people that aren't in IFB, like all the Boy Scout people. That's Boy Scouts, has nothing to do with IFB, but yet they feel the same way. And little boys, little girls, we all feel this devastation that just can't be really described without like going into like so many different scenarios of how it can feel. I don't know. It's just like, I don't know what I'm trying to say, except for the fact that like, if you were wondering like, well, why is this such a big deal? Like, it's just sex. It's just, you know, oral stuff. It's just hand stuff. It's just that like everybody does want to do that stuff for the most part. Like humans, animals alike, we all want to be sexual creatures, but there is just something that hits completely different when you're a minor and it's an adult. I don't know why, but like clearly we were designed to not be okay with it. Otherwise we wouldn't have so much trauma. We wouldn't have so much PTSD. We wouldn't be walking around so scared. And I mean, maybe it's a lot to do with like the secrecy, and like we knew that like if the person got caught they'd get in trouble, so then we had all that guilt. Or we knew if they got caught maybe they'd lose their kids or their families, and maybe it's coupled with threats from your abuser and it was really scary. Like maybe he threatened to kill you or threatened to kill your family or threatened to like do something horrible to you or hurt you. So like that can enhance all of the trauma and the PTSD and everything. But I just got to think like in nature, like there's just something very wrong. And then humans had to evolve and make laws to align with that very natural instinct that it was wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I want your guys' opinion. So please, like, if you made it this far in my terribly done video, if you made it this far, please comment down below. Like, comment down below your thoughts on this subject. Like, I do want to know your guys' opinions. And, like, help other people in the public eye know, like, there's a huge deal behind all this stuff. And, you know, there's so many, like, people joking in, like, social media, and it's like, ooh, minors, and I don't know, like, men being attracted to, like, young teenage girls and stuff like that. It's like, well, there's just it's just so much bigger than I think, like, the stuff. And I don't know, it's just been on my mind lately, especially with, like, all the movies that you see and, like, videos that you see, stuff like that. And it's just like they make it seem very watered down because they're not showing the aftermath of what can happen if that older man does take advantage of that teenage girl because she's hot or something. And it's just that girl could live the rest of her life so damaged that she can't function in society. She feels like dying. And it's really sad. So it's just a bigger deal than I think a lot of people realize that haven't been through it and they don't really understand. And it's like a big, funny, laughing matter. But I mean, not that it's funny, but I don't know. I don't know. It's just like I have a lot on my mind, and I'm sure it's like because of something that I just saw or just experienced or whatever. Anywho, that was a big rambling. I might have to cut some of that out. I don't know. Let's get back to it. One woman remarked that her brother would never have abused her unless he had been aware that she would respond. The proof of her willingness was the fact that she enjoyed his touch. She occasionally left her door open, hoping that he would walk by her room and come in to cuddle. The fact that something within her wanted to respond to his advances proved to her that it was her fault and her shame alone. In this case, so-called cooperation was the natural byproduct of a hunger for relationship and the normal enjoyment of SA. She also despised the abuse, but rather than seeing it as normal, she interpreted it as further proof that she was crazy. Another woman who was cruelly R-worded by a distant relative hated the abuser, and reported no awareness of relational, sensual, or pleasure. Her life was filled with the remnants of loneliness, rage, and bitterness. She had a long history of conquest and relationship with both married and single men. She was not a participating lesbian. Sorry. She was not a practicing lesbian, but she had been involved with a number of female partners. She was cynical, hard, and sophisticated, but her heart was sick of hating her abuser. Her ambivalence was not related to sensual or sexual pleasure, but to an aspect of relationship that has not been stressed so far. She recalled during the R word that the confusion she felt as she heard her abuser moan. She had absented herself from her body by focusing her entire attention on a small crack in the bedroom wall. But at a few points, she remembered feeling strangely curious and proud that she was causing him such apparent agony. She felt some sense of power over him, and in the midst of feeling so helpless and violated, the experience of his moaning was a small scrap of sustenance to hang on to. Her later conquests had the same pleasure and power. She could seduce and entrap and then abandon. She had power, but she also experienced profound loneliness. Her experience of pleasure over something that was clearly abusive confused her and deepened her sense of being evil and unforgivable. Ambivalence over pleasure, power, or the mix of emotions related to abuse swirl into the present with destructive force. There are factors in the present that also create a vortex of self-hatred. One factor is the frightening intrusion of unexpected memories, dreams, and fantasies. Many abused men and women feel as if a portion of their mind is not under their control. Dream elements return that deposit past horrors before their eyes without rhyme or reason. Oh my gosh, I totally feel that. I would dream so much, and sometimes I'd wake up feeling guilty, like, why did I dream that? Like, that's weird. or like, why is it still in my brain or whatever. And it's kind of a curse because you can't really control your dreams, but somehow you feel like guilty or like feel like, you wish you could control it. But anyways, I am a huge dreamer. So it is strange, some of the things that you dream, especially about your past. And it can be like really scary and feel really real. Okay. Pleasant daydreams are suddenly interrupted by the hideous and contorted face of the abuser. A hidden recess of their mind's closet gets dumped into open view at the most unexpected and undesired moment. The fact that memories of events lodged so deeply in the past can return at all provokes a sense of being out of control. Several clients have admitted that part of the horror of the memory intrusion is the experience of pleasure. One woman regularly awakened at night as she recalled the past abuse. Another man recalled at moments of tension and stress at work the day that his older sister gently fondled him in the bathtub. The shameful memory in both cases became exponentially more shameful when it was reused to comfort or stimulate himself. Which I guess that is like a weird concept, and that would feel very confusing. Like, oh, why would I think about that during that stuff if it was terrible? Like that's a very confusing, like really difficult, tricky concept. The conscious use of past abuse to stimulate is another source of deep ambivalence. Unfortunately, the topic of fantasy is so unacknowledged in the Christian groups that its mere mention may be viewed as unnecessary and wrong. The fact is that S practice was never to be divorced from S longing, and by implication, S fantasy. And S is for sexually, just so you know. I keep like trying to be careful with what I say, and then I forget sometimes, so it's like, it's whatever. It is nearly impossible to develop a hunger for a juicy steak that does not evoke images of past dining, current sensual arousal of the taste buds, and the motivation of pursue the pleasure in the future. Arousal is always meditated by images. The pictures drawn from our ancient and current past are the only images available to comprehend our present and plan for our future. Is it any wonder that many abuse victims use their past victimization as the basis of picturing their current relationships, and in particular, their arousal? This is known as the sexualization of intimate relationships. Intimacy once fused with abuse surfaces to some degree or another whenever intimacy is experienced in another relationship. Many abuse victims misinterpret their longing for intimacy as lustful passion when they begin to care for someone of the same or different gender. Depending on the mode of relating to others, the style of contempt, the sexualization of intimacy may provoke the dissolution of the relationship or may be handled similarly to the mode used to deal with their past abuse. Okay, that's a lot to think about. For example, one woman could achieve a big O only when she visualized herself being R-worded by a man who stalked her and eventually overpowered her in private. At times, the fantasy did not provoke sufficient arousal to lead to the O. So she then imagined the scene with the R word occurring in public before countless spectators. The greater shame and the crowd's contempt enabled her to relax sufficiently to achieve the O. Like any pattern of self-protection, the contemptuous fantasy worked only for a time before it needed to be intensified and strengthened. Therefore, her fantasies became even more humiliating and destructive until she was unable to engage in any S activity. The sudden intrusion of or the conscious use of past memories often radically intensified the victim's shame and contempt. Another factor involved in the cause of ambivalence is the future seems Another factor involved in the cause of ambivalence is that the future seems doomed to repeat the past. Behavior is often compulsive and repetitive. Historians claim that if we do not know the past, we are doomed to repeat it. Psychoanalysts claim that man is apt to identify with the aggressor and repeat or play out the past abuse in current relationships. The writer of Proverbs states more something. As a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool repeats its folly. Proverbs 26:11. As noted earlier in our discussion of powerlessness, revictimization is a common denominator for incest victims. But revictimization measured in terms of SA is not the entire story. Much revictimization is not so easily or dramatically measured as tragic R-word or other serious S assaults. Rather, it involves the repetition of other, more mundane, but equally destructive patterns of relating to others. For example, the prim and proper woman mentioned earlier consistently had to rebuff the S interests of married men. In a slightly pouting manner, with equal parts of naive confusion and confident daring, she asked me, "Why do you think men find me so appealing?" The prim and proper, demurely dressed fundamentalist was just a hair's breadth away. Okay, I've never seen this word. Hair's breadth. It's like hair's breadth away from eliciting an affair. Anyone know what that means? A hair's breadth? Oh my god. I'm sorry, I have to laugh. I know this is like a serious book, but like I have to laugh about stuff because like that's a weird word and it just reminds me of like Heather Smith III and my friend from high school, and we'd say stupid stuff and end a lot of our words with TH because of the Bible and the, you know, willeth and deadeth and blah 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 in the Bible. So anyways, it just cracks me up. So just fundamentalist was just a hair's breadth away from eliciting an affair. I felt trapped. What was she asking? She certainly could not be accused of being seductive, but on the other hand, her words and her tone were provocatively sensual and naive. The precise combination of elements both invited seduction and allowed for indignation when a man attempted to do so. It is a surprise that an element of her confusion and hopelessness was the sense that her future will be like her past. The push and pull of her style of relating to men existed in the twilight of her consciousness. She was not wholly unaware of her impact to men, but she had never connected the past abuse to her current way of relating. She expressed her ambivalence by simultaneously loathing herself for her tight-collared seductiveness and feeling rageful self-vindication in being a temptress. All elements of the past, present, and future combine to create a swirling ambivalence that does not find resolution through denial or repeated efforts to control one's thought life. The cost of the convoluted vortex does more damage to the human soul. The cost of ambivalence. The internal cost of ambivalence is the infusion of massive shame and contempt. The topic of SA is shameful, the sense of being isolated and different from normal. Healthy adults is magnified beyond comprehension once the core ambivalence is acknowledged. One woman said, with an air of sad mockery, "My husband will barely allow me to go swimming in mixed company. What do you think he'll do if he finds out that I had an O with my father and that I fantasize about every man that shows me any kindness?" Her ambivalence during the past abuse and the sexualization of intimacy in the present shamed her. She was equally terrified of her dangerous passion and of being found out. Her plaintive question still haunts me. Who in the church understands that I feel torn into pieces? Who can I tell or pray with who is not aghast, overwhelmed, or trite? Shame intensifies the horror of the past. Shame is compounded by personal confusion. How could I feel arousal and hatred at the same moment? Why do vile images return at the most disconcerting moments? Why do I feel S arousal when someone is kind to me? Shame is further complicated when others react to the victim's ambivalence with shock, disgust, and condemnation. The false cure of the personal confusion and relational rejection is either self or other-centered contempt. It protects the soul from the possibility that lust will surface and destroy. Or it propels the person into promiscuous relationships that validates what she fears may have been true. The abuse really was her fault. The proof that it was her fault is the pleasure she experienced or is experiencing in current illicit activities. The hellish cycle of shame and contempt deepens the wound, and the secrecy keeps the wound from being touched by the normal healing effects of the relational affirmation and support. Intimacy begets longing, and longing is interpreted as sexual. Passion destroys, therefore. It must either be avoided or conquered. On that basis, rich relationship is not possible, and when it does occur, the result is even deeper shame and contempt. All right, let me pause there for a second. I know I've been going for a while. Let me see how many pages are real quick. Cut me just itching my nose. Don't cut me, but cut the video. Okay, I have a few more pages of this chapter. So really quick, a couple things. So I like this chapter so far just because it is very relatable and your thoughts just wander, and when, especially if you're first getting intimate with people other than your abuser, it gets really tricky to try to block all those memories out. But then for a lot of us, if your first person is your abuser, it's how you learn things. It's how you first saw things. It's how you learned first about yourself, things that you didn't know, things that did feel good or didn't feel good, or things you liked and didn't like. Sadly, could have been learned by a perpetrator. And a lot of this is focused on family stuff, and that it really bothers me. I really don't like reading about that. So not that I'm being judgmental or shut down about victims that have inter-family abuse. I just personally can't take it because I have kids. It's my mom in me that's so freaked out about that stuff. I cannot. And I just I want so badly to protect my kids from that I just never ever would want that to happen. So I just in all the aspects, as a mom, I just could not imagine looking the other way about that stuff for my kids. And then I just can't imagine being the child and having to have that as a parent, as a parent doing that to you, or a sibling doing that to you. It's just it's just really hard emotionally. I don't know. I can't handle it very well. But I'm trying to get through it. I do appreciate hearing other people's stories in this book because they're so blunt and honest. And I kind of feel bad. I hope he had permission to share all these stories, because whether or not we know the names, I feel these are some dark admissions and really embarrassing. At least I would be embarrassed to talk about it. And not that they should feel even more ashamed, but it's it's good for me to hear, I guess, because so many of us, I'm sure, are struggling with the exact same thing. So I hope you guys are getting something out of it. But it is definitely an awkward book to be reading out loud to people. So a little bit of me regrets it. But we are halfway through this book and I am determined to get it done. So I hope somebody else is getting something out of it. But yeah, there's just so much embarrassing stuff that these people have clearly told this guy that wrote this book. But yeah, so I was saying, my first thought was the thoughts that, pop in when you're intimate with other people, and how do you kind of separate those scary, abusive, traumatizing thoughts while you're trying to be intimate and have fun. And then try to rationalize what's right and wrong. That was where I really struggled. I felt everything was wrong, and it was very hard for me to fully enjoy myself. Even if it felt good, I would still cry a lot afterwards. And just struggled really really bad with a lot of guilt. So anyways, I cannot now remember what my second thought was. Let me think. Well, I know I had a first point and a second point. I cannot remember my second point. I'm so sorry. It'll probably pop in my head later, or maybe I already said it and I didn't realize it. So anyways, back to it. The consequences of increased shame and contempt are a fear of pleasure and a profound hatred of longing, greater likelihood of re-victimization, and chronic patterns of compulsiveness. The consequence stressed under ambivalence, of course, are not entirely related only to this one factor. There are unique contributors, however, that need to be understood. The central consequence of powerlessness is a hatred of being weak. Betrayal increases feelings of undesirability and deepens a hatred of intimacy. Ambivalence robs a person of the joy of being alive as a man or as a woman. For the abuse victim, femaleness or maleness is so intertwined with shameful sexuality and the experience of perversity that it seems impossible to untangle. Consequently, femininity or masculinity is on some level despised or ignored. Most women who have been abused do not richly enjoy being women. Most men who have been abused do not enjoy their masculinity. Pause there real quick. I, for some reason, went like the most extreme on femininity, and I don't know why, but like I had such a phobia of like looking manly. I don't know if it's because of my looks or because of what happened to me, or like I just like really want to be feminine, and like I don't know where that comes from. And I was super aware of like my looks, my appearance, my smell, my whatever when I was a teenager. And like I would carry a toothbrush with me, deodorant, and like a change of clothes, and I was just always like very aware of like my body. And I would be so paranoid that like if I got in a car wreck, like what would my outfit be, and like if they had to like take off my clothes in a wreck like at the hospital. And partly my mom mentioned that one time and it just stuck with me. It's just like, make sure you put on clean underwear before you leave the house because you might get in a car accident. You know how this thing's just like burning your brain. Thanks, Mom. But all like not in an abusive way, but just like things that stick to you, you know, or stick in you or on you, stick in your head. But a lot of that feeling of needing to be prepared and like clean and look good was from my abuse, because I never knew when things were going to happen. So I always felt like I needed to be prepared. But then it was like a conflicting thing of like, why should I be prepared and look as beautiful as I can when I don't want it to be happening to me? But like if it had to, I would rather be prepared and not embarrassed, you know, and like have like dirty clothes on, or I don't know. It's just like psychologically like kind of freaking messed up. But like that's just like one of my things that like pop in my brain while all these people are struggling with the same kind of feeling guilty and confused, and like why would I prepare? Or like the girl leaving the door open for the brother, like why would you do that if she didn't want it, you know? Like, and you could ask those terrible questions, but like you're a kid, you don't know, like you're just handling it the best way you can. And the problem is like most of us like positive affection or positive like reinforcement or compliments, or we want to feel loved and liked and pretty and sexy and everything like that, because like we're human and that's how we are wired. But like at a young age, it's just way more confusing, and you don't really know what to do with it, and you don't really know everything that's happening in the moment, I guess. And then you end up with all these like compulsive disorders and like PTSDs and stuff like that, and you don't always know like why you're thinking things or why you're doing things. But a lot of it could be coming from, you know, your experiences and your abuse and stuff like that. So anyways, that's just side note. Okay, back to it. So with the femininity and the masculinity, I embrace femininity like hardcore. And I didn't really know why like in the moment, but like maybe I'm explaining it to myself. But I don't even know if that's the reason. I don't think I really ever talked about that much in like counseling to figure out like, is there a real reason, or am I just like that? Ambivalence makes pressure any experience of enjoyment highly suspect and dangerous. It is like a chain link fence, connected link by link so that each section is inseparably joined to the others. To pull one link forward is to pull the entire fence. So pleasures of all types is inextricably linked together. When pleasure at hitting a good forehand in tennis opens the door to confident exercise of one's physical prowess, that might be too frightening. Physical pleasure is linked to internal personal pleasure, and both are linked to interpersonal social pleasure. God has made us to be unified in body and soul in our relationship with others. So pleasure in one area is bound to elicit pleasure in others. Therefore, intense pleasure in any area of life may provoke too many memories or stir too much sorrow. I am not suggesting that all abuse victims are morose and joyous. Morose and joyless. Many past victims of wonderful storytellers, great fun at parties, and enjoyed a good meal and caring friends. For many abuse victims, however, there is a limit, a stiff, angry boundary that will not permit cross traffic. Once the boundary has been reached, the guard goes up, and pleasure must be subdued, not enjoyed. Pleasure, like its parent, legitimate longing for the heart, must be quietly watched and controlled lest something get out of hand. A second consequence of ambivalence is the hatred directed toward longing and passion. Hi, Beans. What you doing? You okay? A second consequence of ambivalence is the hatred directed toward longing and passion. In particular, the longing of the soul that arouses the experience of maleness or femaleness. To some degree, once the boundary has been reached, in particular, the longing of the soul that arouses the experience of maleness and femaleness. Please hold.
I swear, my dog.
Okay. So let's attempt to finish this for the 20th time. That's a good boy, Beans. Okay, good boy. Don't drop your bone, okay? Gotta keep it up here. Okay, let's try to finish this chapter 7. Okay. A second consequence of ambivalence is the hatred directed toward longing and passion. In particular, the longing of the soul that arouses the experience of maleness or femaleness. To some degree, most abuse victims are cynical, suspicious, and terrified of deep-souled passion. The hunger of the human heart for touch, nurture, and intimacy is intertwined with a revulsion for sex, either conscious or submerged, and a hatred for their own arousal. The overdetermined reaction to the wound is to become immersed in sexual passion, to blunt the original ambivalence, or to remove any sexual passion by deadening the soul and or withdrawing from the body. Total immersion or complete deadness function similarly to eradicate the struggle with ambivalence. Sexual passion, like any form of pleasure, is intimately connected to the deeper hunger for love and respect. Therefore, it is not uncommon for even non-sexual longings to arouse what is felt to be the turmoil of the past abuse. A friend of mine, an abuse victim, loathes to receive or enjoy a compliment. When I tell her that she did a good job on a project she is working on, she blushes subtly, demeans her effort, and is distant for hours. Her initial response usually indicates some appreciation for noticing, but she would have preferred distance. Warmth and appreciation touches a part of her soul that craves the affection she was denied in her dysfunctional family. Whenever she hopes someone will notice her new dress or appreciate her hard work, she feels alternately lustful and dangerous, and then cheap and frightened. She has found it less shameful and painful to want nothing at all from anyone. It's almost as if every time one wanted to spend $1 in a store, a full security check was required to make the purchase. It would be easier never to go shopping. My friend views her longings as either a nuisance, a weakness, or an envoy of guilt. It should be clear that she cannot afford to enjoy herself as a woman. Kindness is dangerous because it invites her to respond with warmth and joy. The invitation may bring more to the surface than she or the giver of the compliment can bear. Anything that increases a sense of feminine responsiveness. Oh, were you eating the chair or your bone? Please hold for the millionth. It should be clear that she cannot afford to enjoy herself as a woman. Kindness is dangerous because it invites her to respond with warmth and joy. It should be clear that she cannot afford to enjoy herself as a woman. Kindness is dangerous because it invites her to respond with warmth and joy. The invitation may bring more to the surface than she or the giver of the compliment can bear. Anything that increases a sense of feminine responsiveness, therefore, is avoided as the germ that might cause a plague. Imagine what will happen when someone does manage to arouse the, we're almost done, longing in a S abuse victim. Needless to say, that no beans. The picture is not always pretty. No beans. The sexual abused woman seems to often get involved with men who are equally uncomfortable with S desire or S athletes who are looking for new fields of conquest. Oh, I didn't know that was a thing. Like there's actual sexual athletes out there. Like what? The sexual addict finds a reluctant but willing partner in relationship with some abuse victims because their definitions of intimacy and love are similarly sexualized. The abuse victim can either choose to continue redefining herself according to the terrible but comfortable framework or reject her partner and flee from all intimacy on the same grounds. In either acceptance or rejection, the ambivalence has never been exposed or dealt with. Charlie and Jan are typical church-going, committed Christians who truly love the Lord and have been used by God in the lives of others. Their problem is simple. Every now and then, their rage and hatred for each other rips through the house like a Louisiana twister. The cleanup is amicable. Both feel guilty, and peace is restored for several months before another storm cuts its way through their hearts. The struggle is always the same: sex. He wants to make love at least once, if not twice a day. She gives in and only occasionally initiates sex on her own. Other than that, they experience few obvious conflicts. Jan is an abuse victim, and Charlie is a sexaholic. Their relationship worked well to the degree that Charlie experienced the intimacy, arousal, and power of sexual conquest. Jan functioned well as absenting herself from her body during sex. But when Jan began to face the consequences of the past abuse in her life, she started to see her deadness as self-protective sin and Charlie's demands as abuse. Please hold. But when Jan began to face the consequences of the past abuse in her life, she started to see her deadness as self-protective sin and Charlie's demands as abuse. The relationship seen as a model by other Christians worked only to the degree that Jan ignored her deadness and Charlie his demandingness. It was a functional, pleasant, but destructive mess. The abused woman often chooses a partner who will not require deep-souled involvement. Even more, the spouse or boyfriend will often be the kind of person who deepens the victim's self and other-centered contempt, thus diminishing her conscious struggle with ambivalence. Another major consequence of ambivalence is a proclivity to compulsive behavior. The abused man or woman often handles the confusion of the soul by drowning his or her wounds in addictive activities. Addictive behavior is the use of any object or repetitive mode of functioning to handle stress, struggles, or sorrow that both impairs personal functioning and relationships and cannot be stopped without extensive outside intervention. Addictive behaviors might include alcoholism, substance abuse, workaholism, sexaholism, eating disorders, perfectionism, or religious fanaticism. The common element of each is the bondage that is exercised over the individuals by the object of obsession and the deleterious influence it has on his or her ability to love others. The abused person is often captured by the awesome demands of something external, such as work, a dependent friend, food, the masturbation, or alcohol. The compulsion refocuses energy away from the inner struggle, explains away loneliness, and deepens the legitimacy of the unrecognized contempt. One woman I worked with was a chronic masturbator. She was enslaved and hated herself, but all efforts to stop were only occasionally successful. At times, she doubted her salvation, and at other times, cared little about her spiritual status. The struggle with deep shame about the past abuse with her older brother, her hatred and her femaleness unfaithfulness was intensified by a number of promiscuous relationships through her teens and early 20s. When she became a Christian, she ended all her sexual contacts. But soon after her conversion, she began to struggle with overwhelming dreams in which she was exposed as a schmore. I don't want to say that word. A hypocrite and a renegade who would not be granted access to heaven. After every dream, she would awaken and schmasturbate. Soon her schmasturbatory practice became a regular nighttime and then daytime activity. She recalled feeling very cheap, but somehow relieved in a way that could not be explained as merely the satisfaction of sexual desire. She felt confirmed. Her behavior proved that she was a cheap, undisciplined, oversexed schmore who had to hide her passion, her longing, and certainly her past behind a veil of secrecy and shame. Under the constraint of her addiction, she found relief, a reorientation of her fears, and proof that her soul was stained and undesirable. All addictions are illegitimate worship of an object and gain, for a time, a false sense of control to eradicate the ambivalence and numb the wound. Core images related to ambivalence. The contemptuous picture of oneself begins with doubt about intelligence and competency. Powerlessness moves to questions about desirability, betrayal, and finally ends with the conclusion that one is dirty, vile, and cheap. The internal picture explains why arousal and cooperation occurred. Memories return and patterns are repeated in the present. The image of being vile explains not only why the abuser betrayed the victim in the first place, but also gives reason for the absence of deep relationship today. The picture of being cheap, loose, or, more graphically, a schmore, explains why arousal occurred and lessens the sense of damage when re-victimization occurs. The abused woman can use the core image of the schmore as a scarlet letter to hide behind or as a shield to fend off any man who might seek a legitimate relationship. Joanne was a diminutive, sweet woman who felt like a schmore whenever she developed a crush on any unsuspecting male. Her dress and demeanor portrayed innocence and naivety, but her mind was a cascade of sexual thoughts and images. Her prim demeanor belied a terrible passion. The self-image of a schmore was a death sentence that was temporarily postponed as long as she was faithful and chaste, but only as long as she was under strict control. No wonder few had any idea of her struggle with such a vile self-image. Lisa was a bold, carefree bohemian who wore clothes that were just beyond the border of propriety. Her dress was not provocative nor obviously seductive, but her mood was loose, free, and sensual. She liked to see herself as a woman who was too much for any one man. She was confident and take charge in relationships, but remained stiff in the face of relational intensity. Her self-image was vile and self-destructive. She was a toy, a plaything for fun. The lightness and confidence of her style belied the internal image of herself as a toy for abuse. The image of the toy served as a proud badge for her freewheeling lifestyle, but it equally represented the sad loneliness of her shattered heart. The image of a schmore, shamefully hidden or proudly exhibited, is seldom conscious or intentionally chosen. Rather, it is lived so deeply that one may be surprised by its presence and intensity. Core images are contemptuous explanations of internal damage and maps for living out self-protected patterns of relating to others. For the reason the images caused by the internal damage of sexual abuse are most frequently seen in the way the person lives out her interpersonal relationships. The next section of the book will be an evaluation of the external damage due to abuse. The focus will be on the secondary symptoms most commonly related to abuse and the typical styles of relating that are associated with the core images of internal damage. Okay, whew! I'm sorry, that was probably one of the worst videos I made because it's going to be super choppy and cut up because of all the interruptions and my little puppy. I love him to death, but he is not the best when I'm recording. So anyways, I'll end it there because I'm just going to run out of memory. So next time we will be on chapter 8. And yeah. So I will not do a bunch of commentary now because I'm sure you're sick of hearing my voice. And I have to read it no. Sorry, I'm probably a super boring reader. But anyway, I still have to work on my self-esteem and still have to work on not making fun of myself too much. It's just a part of who I am. And I complain a lot about myself and feel very, 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 very insecure. But I hope somebody got something from this. I hope if you have an opinion, you will leave a comment and let me know what you think about all this. Let me know how you're feeling and tell me that somebody read this so I'm not totally embarrassingly alone. Okay, bye. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. 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 Goodbye. Goodbye. I will always be a dork. I can't help that. So, bye.
This bone is disgusting. Can you please stop laughing at that? It's freaking me out. It's so slimy. It's disgusting. And I realize I'm looking at the wrong thing most of the video, and I'm sorry. I hate when people don't make eye contact in videos, but sometimes you forget where the camera is. Okay.
It's just stranger dogs talking in the neighborhood, you're fine. Hey, Diaper. Diaper. You're safe. It's okay. You're okay. You don't need a bark.
Or more I can't read. Change.
Okay. You're not gonna eat the chair. No, we're not doing that. Thank you. Okay, good puppy. Just keep me company, keep me warm. Everything will be fine. Okay.
Guys. Okay. Where was I?